time ticking down to Star Trek's 25th anniversary, and the powers that be pushing for a Christmas release of the movie, Star Trek VI The Undiscovered Country's pieces were falling into place nicely. Having been through an already mountainous amount of drama and distractions, everyone thought the problems were over for this feature film. Of course, though, that couldn't be further from the truth. Hello and welcome to Backtrek, a web series that focuses on the background information of any given topic in Star Trek. In this, the continuation of our look into Star Trek's history, we'll be resuming our look at the making of Star Trek VI The Undiscovered Country, the final movie to feature the entire original series cast. I hope you enjoy. With production teams in full swing and the scripts being copied and sent out to the main cast for them to begin learning their lines, Nimoy and Meyer waited with bated breath to hear what everyone thought of their masterpiece. And in reality, they didn't have to wait very long, though it wouldn't be the responses they expected. First, Nichols, the beautiful and amazing Commander Uhura, had a huge problem with the racism displayed throughout the script, but specifically with a line she herself was to say after Gorkin and company had left the Enterprise's dinner party. The lines as written were to have Uhura say, "Yeah, but would you let your daughter marry one?" She was so offended by that line that she flat out refused to say it. Meyer would attempt to convince her that it was all for the good of the story, but Nichols would hold firm, and the line would be changed. Uhura was also to have said the "guess who's coming to dinner" line, but again Nichols refused, as she felt her character would be above the implied racism this line conveyed, hence why Chekhov would be given the line instead. She wasn't the only one who had problem with racism in the script. Gene Roddenberry himself had vehemently rallied against this point, stating how there was no room in the Federation for racism. After all, it defeats one of Star Trek's core fundamentals, that of IDIC. Brock Peters, who reprised his role as Admiral Cartwright from Star Trek IV, would end up having to have multiple takes done on several of the lines in the movie, as his obviously uncomfortable delivery of the lines made them unusable for the film. Even William Shatner himself at one point refused to say the line, "Let them die." Shatner himself did not believe that even though Captain Kirk had been through so much with the Klingons, even going so far as to have a Klingon kill his son, that his character would be that jaded and racist. But Meyer, fresh off his battles with Nichols, agreed to have Kirk say the line, and then immediately show by Shatner's reaction that Kirk didn't mean to say it at all. This satisfied Shatner, and the scene was filmed. When edited together, however, Shatner's "oops, I didn't mean to say that" reaction was cut altogether, ticking Shatner off to no end, especially since he was powerless to change it. Battles with the cast weren't the only drama being raised surrounding the film, however. With a specific and clearly defined original budget of $25 million, Nimoy and Meyer were aghast to find that there was no way they could ever make this movie for that kind of money. Going back to the Paramount bean counters, they requested a budget of $30 million. Interim Paramount president David Kirkpatrick came back at the two with $27.5 million and absolutely not a penny more. A desperate Nicholas Meyer begged and pleaded, actually being driven to the point of tears over the whole matter, as $30 million was the absolute lowest the film could be made for. So the powers that be retired to debate and deliberate the question of the budget, and came back to Meyer with a resounding no. The budget would not be increased under any circumstances. And so, on the spot, Kirkpatrick canceled the movie and halted production. Flash forward a few weeks later, when Kirkpatrick himself was canceled, being fired from Paramount, and a new president for the studio was hired named Stanley R. Jaffe, and Meyer was surprised to be receiving a phone call at home from the new head of the studio. Jaffe, having heard about the problems surrounding the movie, apologized to Meyer for all the drama, and asked a simple question: would he return and resume production of Star Trek VI? Meyer, respecting the humility of the man, said he'd love to, but he can't, as there simply wasn't enough of a budget with $27.5 million to make the film, that in order to move forward, he needed no less than $30 million. Immediately Jaffe said, "Okay, you've got it," and production was swiftly resumed. As stated in Part 1, in order to make the film from a $40 million budget to a $30 million one, things had to be cut from the film, including the prologue scene that had been written to explain what the crew had been up to just before the movie was to begin. But those scenes weren't the only things to be cut. In order to save more money, a lot of scenes were trimmed down. For example, the dinner scene, as originally written, was to be about twice as long, having our intrepid crew almost coming to blows with their Klingon dinner guests. Not only were scenes trimmed, but the planned Alaska location shoot was outright cancelled. The building of new sets for the film scrapped, and plans for a new Starship model were thrown right into the trash can. These budgetary restrictions meant that many of the sets used in the film had to be already constructed sets from Star Trek: The Next Generation, merely redressed to give a slightly different feel. However, as fandom would notice, the sets weren't really very well dressed at all. And this was of course because of the short window they had to film the movie on these sets, so major changes couldn't be done to them and still allow TNG to resume filming for their September return to television. Data's quarters, which were themselves originally Kirk's quarters in Star Trek: The Motion Picture, were redressed to act as Kirk and Spock's quarters. The Enterprise D's transporter room, sickbay, engineering, and corridors would be redressed to their Enterprise A counterparts. Dr. Crusher's office would become the Enterprise A's laboratory. The observation lounge would become the officers' mess hall, while 10 Forward would be repurposed as the Federation President's office. In fact, if you look closely, you can see the Next Generation style insignia still on the 10 Forward doors, as the production team forgot to remove them for filming. The space shots for the movie would in fact remain with Industrial Light and Magic, but even they would be trimmed for budget. Originally, the movie was to have over 110 space shots. Again, because of the budget, this would be cut down to a mere 50 shots. 50 space shots, however, proved far too little for the movie, as after cutting most of it together, it was discovered that some transitions between scenes were far too jarring and really impacted the movie in a poor way. And so an additional 30 space scenes were then commissioned and edited in. ILM, for its part, did their usual great job on the exterior shots, and although not being paid to do it, would create a new class of starship for use in the movie out of their own pocket. This starship model would become the Sydney class of Starfleet starship. A little bit more of Trek trivia for you all here is in regards to the alien language Martia speaks. At one point, the supermodel alien exclaims Fendopomsky, which, though not a literal translation, basically means "get out of here." The production crew, working hard to get this movie done, found this expression to be hilarious, and so for the rest of the production would cry Fendopomsky in place of any swear words they would need to utter. Eventually, Fendopomsky would even be embroidered inside the production crew's work jackets. Cliff Idleman was chosen to compose the score for Star Trek VI, after Meyer's original choice of James Horner and then Jerry Goldsmith both turned down his offer. Idleman was chosen because Meyer wanted to modify Gustav Holst's score, which was named Planet, for this film. But the cost of getting the rights to that music was simply too much for this budget to handle. And so Idleman, who wrote his master's thesis on that particular score, was chosen and given the direction to pay homage to Holst's original work, something which he indeed did achieve. The score for this movie definitely works well, heightening the tension and deepening the triumphs. There are a lot of Easter eggs also included in this film, paying their own homage to 25 years of the franchise. Some of these include paintings of Surak and Abraham Lincoln from the TOS episode The Savage Curtain, a reference to the Corbomite maneuver with the galley having hand phasers in cabinets there, and in the final scene, the helmsman's chair is left empty, symbolizing Sulu had moved on. In the movie, Commander Janice Rand was supposed to be the character that wakes up Sulu to inform him that Starfleet was looking for the Enterprise. But Christian Slater, who was a huge fan of Star Trek, requested a cameo in the movie, and his mother, Mary Jo Slater, just happened to be the movie's casting director, and she petitioned heavily to get him a part and was eventually successful. The climactic battle as written would have also been very different. Originally, it was to have been Captain Sulu coming to the aid of his old comrades that would have his crew modify a torpedo to expose Chang's bird of prey, tying back to Sulu's log at the beginning of the movie, where Sulu confesses that the Excelsior had just finished 3 years of cataloging gaseous anomalies. But when William Shatner read this, he immediately requested a rewrite, as he felt that no one should be saving Kirk from anything, as it was always Kirk who should be doing the saving. And so the script was hastily rewritten. There's so much to say about this movie, from Kurtwood Smith, Michael Dorn, and Renee Auberjonois having scenes in it, to how Valeris, although a lieutenant in Starfleet, wore the incorrect rank of lieutenant commander during filming, even having the wrong undershirt color at one point. But nevertheless, the film was a huge success for the franchise, and definitely a proper send-off for the original series crew. The film raked in a whopping $96.9 million in the box office, prompting many fans to believe that the OG crew would be returning for another Star Trek film. Of course, this was not to be the case. Though some members would return for Star Trek Generations, this was truly the end to the original series run. 25 years of ups and downs culminating in a tearful goodbye at the end of the movie, with signatures scrolling by for all of fandom to remember the good times, with most scenes easily playing out the best qualities of the original series, with cast members at the top of their game in terms of rekindling the characters they had worked so hard to bring to life back in 1966. Watching the dining room scene for this overview, taking a deep analytical eye to it, I can't help but be amazed and saddened at the same time. This particular scene optimizes the beauty of 25 years of Star Trek, with its absolute perfection in writing, framing, and acting. Just watch the scene again if you don't believe me. So why do you ask, does it make me sad then? Well, simply because it is the end. The end of a brilliant cast, the end of a brilliant run, and the absolute end of an era. But when we next return to this historical overview of Star Trek's history, we'll be taking a look at a new era for Star Trek, the first golden age of Trek television with seasons 5, 6, and 7 of The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine Season 1 and 2, before finally returning to the movie franchise with Star Trek Generations. Hope to see you then. Thank you for watching today's episode of Backtrack. What do you think of Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country? Do you think it was a proper send-off to the crew that gave fandom so much over the years to debate about? Well, leave your comments in the section below, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, hitting that little bell icon so you won't miss a single video we release. Want to help the channel be constant as the Northern Star? After all, you haven't experienced this channel until you've watched it in the original Klingon. Then consider becoming a channel patron. The link to our Patreon account is in the description below. Thanks again for watching. Tak pa, tak beh.